An honor to welcome all of you to the third of a series of 4 webinars that we will be carrying out by the Department of Legal Studies of FUSADES, their governance system for the private sector, CIPE. We have sought to find this practical point of view to promote the systems of AI in a legal way and ethical. In the past webinars, those you might recall that we talked about AI and the rights of and then copyright, and then we talked about AI and the protection of personal data. And today, which is our third webinar of the 4, we will talk about AI that is generative and the future of labor law. So we think this is very important because AI, generative AI, can analyze the surroundings, can make decisions with some autonomy to obtain specific objectives, and it is transforming many aspects of our life and also our work. One of the first questions that we all ask ourselves when we start using AI is, will AI affect or not our current jobs? This is an important and common question, and a lot of experts from universities are carrying out studies, detailed studies about this possible impact of analyzing this. And we have seen that independently from the work that we have, it's probable that our work will have an overlap with AI in a very near future. This does not mean that we will lose our jobs. They will not be replaced necessarily, but we have to remember that AI has this potential of improving the efficiency and productivity, but also there are challenges such as overcoming some difficulties. To be responsible, it's necessary to have a focus centered on human being that will promote safety and the quality of the job. So we need policies for retraining, we need transition in order so that the workers can adapt to this new market where we can take advantage of generative AI as another tool. With this knowledge, we have to be aware of the tasks that we will be giving AI to make the best of these strengths and that they can support us overcome our weaknesses. We want to be more efficient while we do this work that is not so boring, let's say. Because sometimes some work is boring, administrative work. So how do we make the best of our human qualities that cannot be substituted while we take advantage of AI? So we also, in these first opening words, I want to share that AI brings with it a series of changes and also challenges for those principles of traditional labor laws. There's challenges, but also opportunities. There are questions that are left, such as, how do the rules apply when there are programs, like computer programs in between? Or another big question is, can a machine represent the free will of the employer? In some countries, it's happening. So with these questions, we also want to introduce you to some experts that will come and chat and share more questions, because this is a process under construction, and that's why it's so important to talk about these important issues today. And so in this webinar, we have Mauro Solano, who is the Director of State and Government, and we also have Bernardo Diaz, who's an associated researcher. Both come from CIPE, and the second part of our presentations will be carried out by Kevin Cruz, who's CEO of TreeCloud. With these presentations, we will learn about the international point of view and then the national point of view from El Salvador. And thanks to this experience that the three of them have, we know that it will be an enriching webinar. So welcome. And I give the mic to our ally and great friend, Morgan King, Program Officer of CIPE. Go ahead, Morgan. As Marjorie said, I'm Morgan King. For me, it's a pleasure to welcome you to this webinar today, where we will explore the deep impact of AI in the future of work. We're happy to organize this event with our partner FUSADES as part of a series of webinars, as Marjorie said, focused on the main trends and challenges with AI in Latin America. We hope to have your participation in more episodes like this in the next months. At CIPE, we work in the intersection of economic development and democracy. We believe that as the world continues to experiment digital transformation, it's crucial to guarantee that this change will be inclusive and it will benefit all the sectors of society. This means that we have to encourage the collab between the private sector, the government, and civil society to help the companies navigate the opportunities and challenges of emerging technologies such as AI. As part of our mission in CIPE, we support the business communities to adapt to the changes encouraged by AI, to build resilient markets, and to have policies that promote innovation together with equity and inclusion. When we deepen today's conversation, we will analyze how AI is reshaping industries and presenting challenges and opportunities for the workers and the companies. Without further ado, for me, it's a pleasure to present you to Mauro Solano, who's a great partner of CIPE in Argentina. I'm sure that he will give you very interesting points of views on the global trends and international trends of AI in the future of work. I encourage you to stay on for the Q&A session, where you will be able to interact directly with our experts at the end, and you can ask any questions you have. So thank you. Thank you, FUSADES. And I will give the mic to Mauro. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well? I will share the presentation very briefly, but before we begin, I want to thank FUSADES for the opportunity. Thank you, FUSADES. So, well, now it's midday in Buenos Aires. It's great to have, I would love to share some ideas, as we were saying before. The world of technology with work, coordinating the development of economy. And I will have to explain in a few minutes what's the vision of the people, the states, and this can all there can be an interesting perspective. Without further ado, I will share the presentation. Well, very briefly, first mention to the context. According to the literature, we're going through an era of great change. Depends on the author. We are in the third or fourth, or some even say fifth, industrial revolution. The characteristic here has nothing to do so much with where we are, but just to understand that in this stage, speed is what matters. if we think about the last stages, there were long periods of time between one and another. We're talking about 100 years or more. And currently, we see very fast change that amazes us. If we stop and think about them, towards the end of 2022, we were hearing about the existence of ChatGPT, and it was opening up to the world 2 years later. It seems like it was just yesterday, but now there's so much development and applications connected to it. And we're moving forward fast in AI, generative AI, machine learning, deep learning, etc. Right? We're moving fast. Also in the versions out there of these solutions and tools. Conclusion is, there's big change, great uncertainty, and that equals tension. So people and organizations start to have a lot of tension. This causes that we're constantly working with ideas and instruments to face 21st century problems. And in these problems, as literature calls them wicked problems, in reality, they're not very different to what we have faced in other times, except for the fact that they require further resolution, an important dose of political definitions of how the states, in the relation with organizations of the civil government, civil society, and private sector, they can find new solutions to old complex problems, where all of these players who have different interests play a part in. What happened after COVID? COVID obviously was a catalyst of the digital transformation at a high level, at a national, municipal, and province levels. For those of us who are federal, we have moved fast, as I mentioned here, towards the and especially what that has to do with the redesign and digitizing and attention to the people, because the government is always behind the private sector. Important thing here is that in one sector and the other, the fundamental base is data. Data multiplies, and it has become an asset. And literature says that the amount of data that was available went from 33 to 165. And this will accelerate even more. Here we can see that from 2010 to 2023, we'd seen an increase of 42%. And in the last three, so we are going towards a world where disruptive technologies, fundamentally need the support of data. And we have to pay special attention to this so that we can have public data governance that can have an impact, obviously, in the private sector. That has to do with the fact that if and when COVID showed us that there were not kidding, cannot hear him well. There were solutions in the private and public sector and operability. So as underuse is it just me? Here in the chart, you can see that generally we read and we have seen this. Our countries at a regional level are usually really good in preparing and drafting regulations for data usage. But if you look at the impact, there's a huge gap. That is so we want to create value for the people when we share the data. It doesn't have to do with the paradigm of open government per se. It has to do with how do the governments control all this data and all this information available, putting the data at the center and connecting it with the needs of the people. How do we go from governing our data to generate value, to simplify and digitize, to really manage interoperability and add transparency and data protection towards public digital transformation that will allow us to go from analogical governments there's an overlap in the sound. We have to think of those governments that are still not analogical, are still not digital, based on paper or in processes that are digitized, very newly digitized, to a paradigm focused on the user and open government, and also some procedures that are enabled by IT so that later we can put data at the center as an asset. And we have to think of assets that do not react in front of the, but that can anticipate. This is the key change that we have to achieve in the public and private sectors. How do we manage these new technologies that today can allow us to think forward? What can be the dilemmas, the demands, the problems that may come up for users and people in general with digital governments, so that we have to think ahead of what could happen. The fundamental change here is thinking not reactively, but we have to be ahead of the game, thinking of the needs that citizens can have based on the information and the data that we already have, and that allow us to do this exercise during disruptive technologies. Public policies that are related to the population has to be enabled and allowed, and the data that they already have that allow us to know what the needs are. And also the study, as if it were a person, it not only analyzes but also remembers what information it has, and it avoids using people just as a pawn. They stop asking them for every step. They stop asking them for all this information because the state generates the information. So, the one and only, because the data can be obtained by the government. It can be interoperative and doesn't have to constantly be using the people to solve their internal issues. And finally, an intelligent state reasons, but it also shares it with civil society to take better decisions based on evidence. Now, thinking about the future, the near future, about human capital. What brings us together this morning Well, thinking about the future, and Bernardo would probably cover the from the private sector even more, we'll find similar things. Nowadays, we need people that have digital capacities that obviously there are. I want to cite an author here. He cuts up a bit. He says that the essence of the public employee of the future is that he has a generalist training that can allow him to incorporate competence of learning and relearning during his whole life. Because those skills that the new people need, the new people that come into the labor market, because of speed and the type of problems that we face, will be very different than those that will be required in the future. They will not even be defined yet as of now in the public or private facets. So, soft skills, plasticity, general training, and of course, a level of digital capacities. This doesn't mean that we have to have human capital 100% engineers and systems or experts in IT sciences. But we have to have a level of competence that can allow us to talk to the super experts that will be the ones designing the algorithms, and they will help us develop the solutions. But that they can understand the user, the people, and link them to the potential that these technologies have. So without wanting to go into too much detail, we have to think about linked capacities, thinking forward. We have to work as a team and in a coordinated way. These complex problems are no longer solved in a silo way. We have to work as a team always. And how do we direct complex processes together? And especially, how do we combine individual intelligence, our own skills, with collective and artificial intelligence that are more than just the sum of the parts? And how the organization can learn, and how we add AI. So it'd be a combination and coordination of individual intelligence, collective, and artificial. Some lines or some things that we could take into account: how to prepare the capital for this immediate future using learning methodology that is connected to social intelligence, as we said, and also creativity and tolerance, collaboration, that are principles that have a lot to do with how do we prepare our workforce in the private and public areas, the openness to have be more generalist but focused on the new problems, and how we add tools that can allow us to live to coexist together. Flexible environments. Now it's proven that we have to promote the personal autonomy of the agents, but it has to be well rooted in collective projects, and the organizations have to allow us this combination of the intelligences, obviously an individual, and how it's connected collectively, and how do we add AI to this, and especially how we understand and we interpret the use of data, the analysis of data, and how do we develop capacities, in this case, for public administration of the 21st century. How do we think, administration 4.0, organizations 4.0. Another thing is the development of capacities in areas that will not be automated. Empathy, solidarity, promoting human rights, innovation, collaborative connections, among others of the soft skills that are different to hard skills. and the development of exponential technologies. How do we prepare without being specialists? There will be cloud computing, the Internet of Things, AI, deep learning, machine learning, etc. And to wrap up and leave the floor to Bernardo to understand this, how can we shape our people for the future? The future is today. Today, we live with the vanguard tools, with the tools that are connected to these new developments that are now going through AI, generative AI, but are obviously starting to be used again. I'm getting bad connections. There are four spaces in that we have to work in. On the one hand, it's bad connection. Digital problem, how we solve digital problems, and soft skills. How we work on in teams and how we lead these processes. And finally, how is this combined with the knowledge, fields of knowledge and learning and relearning that we mentioned recently? Not only knowing in the wide sense of the word, but how we have to learn to reflect and add new skills and how we apply this. Bad connection. And as the literature says, we always have to have ambidextrous organizations. We have to have an eye on what's going on in the day to day, but we mustn't forget to face forward and look at strategic planning, how we use the data to be proactive, and how we can reflect in that sense and make better decisions based on evidence. This is a brief introduction about what we're talking about and where the organizations are headed. And what characteristics there should be. We're at CIPEC. Obviously, we have the governance of data has to be the fundamental pillar for digital transformation. If we don't have good data, we will not have good use of AI. Going from the fragmentation to integration, this is fundamental. Also in the private sector, how do we provide public infrastructure at the service of the people? Digital services that go hand in hand with the population, and how do we add and retain talent? This is also a conversation in the private sector. There's a lot of competition for these profiles, and we have to think of new ways of attracting them that don't only have to do with the salary. There are a lot of things now with flexibility, working from home. How do we promote this ecosystem? So to encouraging the small companies that are starting to provide solutions in this sense, the real future competition to support this type of ecosystems locally, nationally, and also regionally. How we can be proactive and transparent. And cybersecurity, but we mustn't forget, all of this is connected not only on data that must be protected, but that have to be managed with a lot of care. Now we know that there are many applications in Argentina. I could give you many examples, but and finally, sorry, it's essential to have political support to be able to sustain these processes and give continuity in our countries. And to accelerate the efficiency. And finally, how do we make all this happen in the articulation between the civil society, international cooperation? It's all available in the CIPE page, the consensus, the documents that we have helped us reach these conclusions. And obviously, I'm here for any questions you may have. And with this, I hand over the mic to Bernardo. Bernardo, are you around? Thank you, Mauro. Thank you, CIPE and FUSADES for the invitation. As Mauro said, to introduce some of the results of research that we're doing at CIPEC that have to do with the work on platforms. We're going to talk about Argentina, but this can be applied in other countries of the region. So I'll share the presentation. We did this with Paula Senkman and Agustina Lacunza, who is from the IDB. She's working with us from Washington. So we try to understand the workers and businesses that work on in Argentina. The motivation of this, or part of these AI and other technologies, to transform some of the economic activities that we've been working on every day. Retail trade, which provides a lot of employment in all the countries. So to think about how these technologies give way to new ways of employment. But as it's relevant, it's also hard to understand them or to describe, because in general, we don't have a lot of data. Many times the data is not good quality data. Usually everything that has to do with platforms have challenges that have to do with the labor conditions, the nature of the labor relation, but we think that it's also worth looking at the other dimensions that this work has. First of all, with the activity of the businesses. Normally, people forget, they focus on the workers, but not on the businesses that are the ones that provide the goods and services. And the dimension of formalizing and productivity beyond some challenges that may arise, what opportunities there may be for some workers in terms of offering, the opportunity of some activities that they already carried out, which would also imply visibilizing them and the impact on the productivity that the businesses could have. So what we did was work with platforms with delivery platforms in Argentina. One of the contributions is to move forward in the quality of the data. Using admin data. This is the data that the companies have themselves about how many hours their workers work, what's their salary, their average salary. We will follow the people for a whole year, and we'll complement this with a survey to over 12,000 workers around the country. Normally, the surveys that we had were not over 500 observations, and they generally were very focused in the capital city. In the case of Argentina, Buenos Aires, or the metropolitan area. So here we ask the workers about their motivations, about what they used to do before for a living, like what the transition was like. And as I said, we can take this to the whole population of workers on the platforms, and we don't have to depend on having a design or a sample, or like it's usually done social media, because there can be some bias. And then we'll complement this with, like I said before, including the businesses. We will give them a survey. We didn't have an idea about this. We start to include these actors so that we can see how the platforms can increase productivity. They can adopt technologies or changes in the. So the first thing I wanted to show you is how many workers we're talking about. 2022, about 82,000 people worked here per month, and 236,000 worked at least once a year. Sometimes they work for a month and then they don't work there anymore, or they have other types of work available, or it's not free, or it's not frequent enough. So we considered it those that at least worked once in the year. All in all, this is about 2.4% of the total employed in the private sector in Argentina. This is only 3 platforms that we're working with. It's a considerable number. If you want to compare it with other sectors, everything has to do with service, with passengers, logistics, comparable activities. In 2022, there were 186,400 employees, and we compare it to another sector where this temporary employment, where they work some months and some months they are off. All of the sectors of IT and IT programs, data processing services, databases, they employ 86,000 employees per month, so it's similar. Of these workers, one characteristic is that some of them work for different pages. So 10% of the total, and they focus generally in Buenos Aires and around Buenos Aires, which has the highest population in Argentina. And if we compare it to other countries of the region, most of the employees are men, and they're male, between 18 and 34-year-old. They have some level of high school education. Usually they are immigrants. In the case of Argentina, they are from Venezuela. A lot of Venezuelans who have gone to college, and they are working on these different platforms or pages. About motivations, most of the people say that they come into these activities to add some income, and because it gives them a lot of flexibility about where to work, how to work. The answer that they come to the platform because they lost their job or because they don't have another opportunity in another sector is not so common. And this is it's different in other areas of Latin America. But in the case of Argentina, it's more similar to what happens in the US or Europe, but the activities are complementary because they are out of work, or so over 14%, 15% do another type of work. A lot of them, others are independent. a lot of them have to do with the notion that they work many hours in poor conditions. But what we can see is that in general, 45% of the people work 40 hours or less a month. To compare them with a full-time job, 8 hours a day, 20 days a month, about 90% connect to these platforms. Usually it's partial work, very few hours a week. And it's consistent with this idea that is complemented with other activities. Generally, we're thinking mobility, for example, CIPE, Uber. The distribution is quite similar, as you can see here below. In general, women and younger people work less, and the people that have another job declare less amount with this idea of complementing. When we look at the income, there's a discussion of, okay, how much money do they make? Do they make a lot? They don't make enough? Where the workers spend many hours but make very little money? Well, we can see here, we can understand what income, there's total hours in the month. And what we see is that there's high variability. They work very little hours, and people between 18 and 20, age 20, 24 don't work a lot. But the people that are older work more. They have income that are 2.5 times. So there's a lot of dispersion. Mobility ones, they do have more expenses because they have to load gas, etc. And also a gender gap of about 5-6%. That is consistent with a gender gap in income in all these platforms, such as in the US. There's evidence, like in Uber, you can really understand this gender gap. In Argentina, we see similar numbers. Here you can see the distribution of income per hour. Mobility is quite to the right, but there's a lot of overlap. So because there's this huge variability, and generally the regulators or the people are thinking about these problems, as can be, I don't know, legislators, they tend to think about the work they know well, the day-to-day work that were of people that work 8-hour jobs in traditional positions. So you can control or compare the people that work that amount of hours. So what we did was we looked at two groups: those that make very similar amount to an average worker in the formal sector, and then those that work about the same amount of hours in a full-time job, 160 hours. So we see here's first these high income group that they make relatively more or similar to what a average formal worker makes. They work about a full-time job, actually a little bit less. There's a distribution there below. What is red is those that make about the same as a normal, formal, typical job, and the blue ones are the rest. So what we see is that this distribution is quite towards the right. Some work more, some work less, but they work less than 8 hours a day. So we can't really compare it to a full-time job. If we compare it to the formal sector, it's not that they don't work twice the amount of hours, sometimes less. And if we look at the same time of hours, okay, they make a little bit less if we compare the private formal sector, depending on the case, between 11% and 25%. So if we look at the graph on the right, The green line is the private salaries, formal salaries on average in Argentina, and the blue line is different, but the difference is not so high. We compare the medium ones, they're similar. So these peaks that you see here in some months is because in Argentina, we have or half, we get half the salary in June and December. So the formal employment increases a bit more there. So when we compare this, it's not so different from the workers in the formal private sector. What we can also see is what these workers were like before they got into the web pages or platforms. About 80% already had a job. It's not that they were unemployed, they already had a job. So it's consistent with this idea of, okay, well, maybe, this gives me more flexibility, and only 4% was looking for a job. 30% was doing similar activities, some independently, and about 10%, sorry, when we consider the platform jobs in Argentina, the way in which this is formalized is through a scheme of contributions that is simplified. And about 10% of all of them are platform workers. So these three platforms contribute with over 10% of all the formal workers in the region, which is a considerable number, and it speaks of the potential of things that were done before, like delivery work, but were done informally. And these contribute with about 1.5 or 3% of all of the money in 2022. If we think it's just three companies, it's quite considerable. So we see that when we compare workers that work the same amount of hours or that make about the same amount of money as an average job, it's not that they work many more hours to make the same, or that they work the same and make it less. In some way, they are similar. What we see is that they are partial activities just to complement income, and they are formal activities that can contribute significantly to the contribution through the contributions. As I was saying, then there's the companies. You would think that they could have an influence on the activities through a larger scale, and it can allow them to sell more, but also through the changes in the productivity or adopting technologies. So what we see in terms of sales, about 50% of the companies that we did declare that they increased their sales, and 80% of those that declared that they increased their sales had no changes, but 12% said that they are hiring more employees. So a lot of them don't hire more people. That means that a lot of them increase their sales by increasing productivity. And if we look at investments in reforms, or we see that there's not that much evidence that more of the sales coming through here anyway. So it's not very rigorous evidence because we don't have formal sales data or very precise data of all the businesses, but apparently there is some positive. And also about formalization in terms of paying taxes, not so much in formalizing employers that they had incorporated. Maybe these workers maybe they had informal delivery workers. So there's an impact on formalizing them in the businesses. But sometimes some of the they didn't pay some taxes because because they are on the webpage now, they have to have invoices so they don't sell in the black. So a third of them improve the times of preparing the request. There's some new ways of, they improve packaging or how they receive the requests and the process and how they process them within the business. And about 25% improved accountability. So it's not only sales. There have been improvements in other ways and other aspects of the business. So just to wrap up and leave some time for Q&A, what we see is a big diversity of profiles of hours worked and income gained. It's important to bear in mind that there's a diversity, not to think too much of just one type of work, but there's many, many others. It'd be wrong to think that there's an average, because the average may not be indicative of what's happening with the rest of the population. And as I said, most of the patterns that we see are consistent with an activity that's part-time, and it's quite flexible. There's a lot of rotation, a lot of variability in how many hours they work. So this flexibility is seen in the data. And also, there's an impact on the formalization and as a catalyst of improving productivity. We were focusing too much on the businesses, but if we think that these platforms also reduce the costs and facilitate connections between trade and consumers, well, then there can be some benefits in increasing the scale and using scale economy. Now, something that makes us think is that there are some challenges that we think about how these platforms use AI to match consumers with businesses and to develop their own businesses, and the platforms open their own businesses more, or their own units to sell services or goods. So one question is, how can they use their data or the data that they have of the consumers as an advantage to compete in the market against other businesses? And that's something that could entail some risks, defense of competition, and we'd have to start thinking about this. And also, what I was mentioning, how we use the data. What we see is workers that can opt between different schemes and times. For one type of worker, but it maybe impedes some of the benefits of for workers that really need the flexibility, and that this will allow them to soften some of the issues through crisis periods. Or so with this, I want to close. And this will be published in brief, so I encourage you to visit our page and to see what the economic development does with this, connected to the future work as well. Thank you so much, Mauro. Thank you, Bernardo, for what you have shared with us this morning. We have had a great perspective of the work that you have done in Argentina as well, and now we're seeing how this all plays into AI. So now I would give the mic to Kevin Cruz. He is CEO of TreeCloud AI Lab, and he's also CEO of Xcubit. Both companies are from El Salvador, and he leads. we've heard Kevin in other events as well. He's shared about these interesting elements that he has from his own experience, and he has been working on the day-to-day with AI. So, Kevin, it's all yours. First of all, good morning, everyone. I want to thank FUSADES for the opportunity, and CIPE especially for giving me the opportunity of being in your offices. Good afternoon, good morning, if you're watching from Argentina, because, well, I've had the opportunity of being in their offices, and I think they're beautiful, amazing. So thank you. I'll talk a lot about AI beyond how we can use it, but also what impact it has in El Salvador. And I've been working now for 13 years with AI in international markets in Central America and the US and the UAE. I've also been able to export AI services to the Mideast and North America. In that context, very briefly, I hope this can be useful to you. Can you see my screen? Beyond the change, redefining the art of working with AI. Though all of us that are here understand the AI concepts, and I think that I will talk about generative AI, especially because when we talk about AI, generative AI, we're talking about an AI model that seeks and centralizes data to generate new results, such as AI can be used to create new things based on the data that we have trained them with. In that context, we have texts, images, music, videos. We learn from the data that are given as such. Like ChatGPT was trained with big data of information, open sources and closed sources, and it can generate results according to reality or a determined context that are not always reliable. I will teach you to question what AI does as well. Because there's no perfect AI. All of the AI, because it's based on data, data is important to have. It's important to have quality data, quantity, like quantity and quality data, and also a data center that is well distributed, not only focused on an idea, but that in general, it can be very open to an open context. And what do I mean with this? The use of data that is public at a database level. So, and that's important because it's when we talk about privacy, I'll mention this. So I talk about AI capable of generating new solutions. I say solutions, some are creative, some can be conventional, but the important thing is that they are tools that are helping us now. This is not the future, it's today from 2022. And there I will talk about the context and about when ChatGPT became famous. Not perfect, but we have to start using them. And in El Salvador, we say we have to work them in the most proactive way possible, helping us with the day-to-day. About the context and ChatGPT, everybody we think about not only generative, but also in general. In the last years, and I know AI is from the past century, AI is a concept that comes from the past century, from 1956. Alan Turing, a context of how to replicate human capacity. So for an IT system to have the capacity of replicating speech or vision, or Alan Turing tested, so he did the Turing test that what it does is to validate that if I'm talking to a machine, if I'm talking to a person, and how can I know the difference? So now the Turing test is overcome. It's old. Now that's not only ChatGPT, but what I want to say is that in the last years, we were talking about in general, and when I say in general, it's not AI. There's a term that we use that is AI applied to all types of problems. No, I'm talking about the use of AI in a democratic way, specifically to solve problems, financial or um, weather prediction or uh, personalizing tastes. Netflix, for example, uses AI to try to tailor make. It could find the movies that you may like, or the hyper personalization. So AI is not new. That's what I want to say. We've been using AI for a lot of things, for classifying emails. Google uses it, such as even Airbnb, to see how much, what commissions to collect and what's being sold the most and what patterns of homes where there's more or less use to automate experiences. And here, this is the journey, which is the newest thing. We're talking about natural language processing, and that is, this was famous in the last years. I don't want to be too technical, but basically, it's the ChatGPT context. So ChatGPT was created through the processing of speech and the context of human language. And when I say human language, we're based on all the languages. There's no region, and the prediction of text as such, or the results, are based on the historical data that exists on the internet. This is important, and this means that everything that is on the internet is not, it's not all true and it's not all a lie. So ChatGPT can give us good results, and some are completely different. What happened in 2020? We started becoming integrated with smaller devices, in this case, Internet of Things, the capacities to process information, store it, and make predictions. So it seeks to classify data and data input, and also provide an output that is results. So there's another context, conspiration, and AI applied to robotics, which has been happening, such as Tesla, but I don't want to stay there. And the last year, is where we learned about the AI, generative AI. This generative AI is what we know as a capacity of generating new contexts, new contents, new ideas that are based and related to, okay, it's not new ideas, they're based on training, and that's what I want to say, because that's important. So the market trend, because we have to understand where AI is used the most and how the markets are changing. So AI is being implemented in the whole industry. And when I say all the industry, I'm referring food, transport, health, especially to solve new problems or to cover the existing problems in a more efficient manner through the use of data. So this automation, and ideally what I want to say is that there is a general trend to the use of generative AI, which is top of mind now. Everybody's using AI, especially in the day-to-day. Maybe some of you are using ChatGPT to generate documents or automate tasks in programming, but it can also be used for other tasks that are not necessarily programming, but also for the day-to-day. Not only reports, but also to generate analysis of data that we can introduce. So in certain parts, I recommend, and I don't recommend it because ChatGPT keeps all the information that we introduce. So privacy is important. So what have we been saying? AI is not new. AI is what is a trend now. It's a trend because, like I said before, we are using it more in the market. Other techniques such as chatbots or intelligent agents that have been automating conversations, customer care. There's a lot of experience for implementation of chatbots in El Salvador. The banks use it. Even the salons, I've seen how they wanted to minimize the time. So something that I want to stand out as well And AI is changing so fast. In 15.7 billion dollars. That's what's going to happen in the near future, because by 2030, 2030 is just around the corner. So new products, services, increase the demand of professionals, and highlighting a global impact on all the industries. So going back to the labor force, and this is something that we did at El Salvador level. We did this to 5,000 companies, and also I'll show you the data of the Economy Forum, the World Economy Forum, especially because of the trends. We see that the trends now, the companies are starting to invest heavily in educating these technologies. Tools for processes with AI. There's a lot of investment in El Salvador. We've also validated already firsthand in training for the use of ChatGPT and prompt engineering, which is more simpler, the capacity of asking AI the very clear context. And we talk about prompt engineering, it's prompt engineering, sorry, that allows you to specialize in how to ask AI, especially generative AI. So the acceleration of the automation of the process is moving fast. I think it's incredible how the companies are adopting these tools such as ChatGPT and cloud, especially to process their data. I want to use a disclaimer here. These countries should be trained for data privacy, because we're giving them our data. We're just giving them this for free. But it's just part of the work that we're doing at an El Salvador level. We're educating the population as well, so that they can try to handle their information, just not just to introduce everything into ChatGPT. Going back to the work ethics, we see a transition of the people and the roles, and there's some labor force is more efficient than it used to be 20 years ago. And by more efficient, I mean not only the use of technologies, but I refer to the use of AI as a tool for the day-to-day. And now, in El Salvador, everybody knows what ChatGPT is. This can help you in repetitive work, such as drafting documents or automating some processes. And El Salvador and other companies are helping us to improve internal processes, and not only adopting this, but digitizing as well. Because in El Salvador, and I'll say this very generally, a couple of years ago, the government didn't bet so much on technologies as they do now. Now, there's many courses, and they're encouraging adopting AI, such as other technologies, for the use of traceabilities. What does this mean? Well, that El Salvador is more technological now than in the past, because people are more democratized. And El Salvador has 83% of adoption of internet by the population. This is all very recent data that they launched in the census. So at the end, what I want to say is that AI in El Salvador is already a reality. We're using it. Many of the companies and the academies and the universities are aiming at these technologies. It's important to understand how the industries are changing, or what impact AI has on the industries. I'll try to be brief, because I can go on and on about this. One of the first areas is the office and everything that has to do with admin, because now the management uses it to automate reports, like I said in the beginning, but they jump over privacy. They put in all the information, and That's something that has to change. So every country should democratize the use of local AI. That can be used for another session. But in summary, this is being adopted in automating processes. Where in the economy and finance level in El Salvador, it's well democratized as well. In the whole world, the biggest impact have we seen in the industry ecosystem. All industries are using or adapting AI. This doesn't mean that all of the companies have AI or they are adapting to the industries. That's different. This means that the industries as such at a world level, in the case of the US and Central America, are starting to use AI for some of our processes internally. There's a window of opportunities that is huge in order, especially to learn new skills I will talk to you about, and also the opportunity of improving the way and how we are efficient with our time. And all this repetitive work that we've been doing in the offices, well, a lot of the offices in El Salvador are using it all the time, everywhere, even to ask questions. Now they use ChatGPT to solve anything they may have. Usually, before they used to call me up, now they don't. So another thing I want to mention is this World Economic Forum work. Basically, the jobs that are decreasing or increasing is AI machine learning specialist. Many of you might say, Kevin, I came here. I'm not an engineer and I don't want to be an engineer. But what I mean is that it's important for us to see the trends. Or some people are older and say, well, I don't know, I can start learning engineering. I'm already 50. The idea with this information is just for you to understand how the market is behaving, where we are aiming at. So AI is looking specifically, it's looking for specialists on AI, and not only using and creating it, but how can we adapt it in our day-to-day life, especially as a tool that can help me make the best of my time. Sustainability, specialists that analyze data or that see this democratization, it's important. Also, data analysis. I'll try to be brief here about cybersecurity. We're also seeing engineers, young engineers or specialists, data administrators and scientists, robotics, and I won't go too much into detail here, but this means that AI is the now. So some works are being reinvented. I was how can we use generative AI? We can create new recipes, new combinations, but it can help you make the best of the generate or automate content of the pictures of your publications for social media, or improve the recipe you have. So AI can be adopted everywhere. All of this can be reinvented. Reinvented. Reinventing means to have the capacity of being able to see business opportunities, especially in this very dynamic thing that is happening. And those that don't want to adopt AI are really missing out. I think you should think twice because it's already happening. So I'll stop here. We're thinking about creative people. So when we think about creativity, how can we think? How can we ask? Or how can we make the best of these tools to make a process more automatic? Thinkers, analysts, and I like to think a lot outside the box when we think about a problem or processes, see it from another point of view. The analysis can help us be efficient as well. So on this, I will think a little bit about having the capacities. I know that not everybody has the capacities of adapting to tools like this so fast, but we see that this it's a mental thing. You have to think, I can do it. No matter how old I am, I can use these tools to be more efficient. I won't stay here, but it's just important to have these in. It's happening. It's not the future, it's the present. It's already happening. Next slide. So the trends of the market, this is a sentence that I always say, these skills or trends happen in Argentina and in the US, Central America. All of these, this work of the past or work of the future, because it's a reality already, are valid here and in China. This means that if I specialize in using AI in a very efficient way, in a very creative way, I can work here or in Argentina or in China. You can work for anywhere in the world because we open up. So what are we looking for? AI, data scientists, analysts, research scientists, machine learning engineers. But what do you mean AI? If you're just talking about development and technology and engineers, there's also the other counterpart. So when we think about AI, it means it has the capacity, or we have the capacity of using it everywhere, as I mentioned before, in all the industries. So we don't have to be afraid. I am, okay, the cook. I was saying this. Um, it's not that we all eat, but you can be more efficient the day to day. How to organize our calendars and payment processes. With this, I want to say that it's not only the trends of the future professions, but let's look at our work, at our jobs, and let's think, okay, if Kevin just said that AI can be used in anywhere, that means that if I am a business administrator or I'm an attorney, I can use AI to use processes. Yes. We have to learn how to ask AI. So that's finding labor opportunities. And this is for El Salvador. I mentioned this because I talked about this in a university as well recently. The opportunities are okay to know how to ask a question, or we want to solve it with AI, for example, in our companies. What can we automate? We can automate emails and follow up on clients, or decision making. Or, okay, in the inventory of my company, we ran out of something, so I can automate the request for X product when you run out. Or how much am I selling in the day to day? Or how many sales you have? Or I'll ask, okay, do I have the data of all of my companies? Don't introduce everything to ChatGPT, please. There's other tools. But the purpose is to the processes. So I can adapt AI to my process, yes. And for my day-to-day, of course. We just have to think of what we want to automate. The second thing is that the data is the most important. Data is the gold of AI. The more data we have and the more clear, the better we can retrain AI models and take the best of the information to have an analysis of what the trends are of a business, something legal, what's the trends of automated documents, and a solution. Traceability. There's many models that can be done or used. You can use JAMA or NIFRA, other models that already exist you can use in your computers, and you can ask them questions so that your information won't be to the OpenAI servers or ChatGPT servers. So in El Salvador, and just to summarize, I'll try to be very brief. In El Salvador, we have adopted chatbots a lot with data to automate automatic reporting. It's important to mention that this is what is being used the most at El Salvador level. Everybody feeds ChatGPTs to automate tasks, and that's the trend. And the trend is growing. So, and there are companies that have the possibilities of integrating this information that I'm showing. This very fast. By companies, I mean those that can pay for a certain data monitoring, and they can process the information locally. So that's very recommended to implement them at an infrastructure level, especially not to give data away. And that's important. So what else? I think I'll wrap up with this. The business opportunities in El Salvador are chatbot with AI, intelligence AI that is predictive, and AI for finances. This is used in many processes at an industrial and internal process level. All the companies have finance. They all talk about accounting. They all talk about indicators. And it's impossible to talk about a company if you don't have at least a financial context. We can use and take advantage of AI to automate all of this. With this, I want to say goodbye. I would love to give you all the information I really have available, but I can't. So what I want to say with this is that AI is collaborative work between humans and machines. Let's not see it as something that will replace us, but let's see it as an opportunity, as a window to improve our work, to be more efficient, and to also have time to ourselves and have some creative solutions to any type of problems. So thank you very much, and that's it. Thank you, Mauro, Bernardo, and Kevin. Each of your presentations has been amazing. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.